So Joanna's back, okay? I invited her back because you had such good things to say about her previous talk about 3 weeks ago or so.
Yeah.
On a lot on hydration, but a little bit on nutrition. And you know, our runs are getting long, and I asked her to come back and talk more specifically about like nutrition in preparation for these long runs that we're doing. You know, how to get ready for it, and then how to manage it during the run itself, because it's so important. And then I'm sure that you're happy to answer questions about hydration if people still have some about
whatever
salts
questions
and stuff.
Anybody has, we can answer those questions, just like last time.
So we got 4 miles today, so we got a little bit of time, right? That's why we're here, and it's
only
not raining.
4 miles.
Yeah. So I'll give you a little report that Joanna's been helping me and helping me with hydration and nutrition. And we had a big run this past weekend. Jan's here. Yay, Jan. Over 40 miles. Jack, PR, over 30 miles. I ran 50. And Jack and I were sharing notes, right, about the hydration. It was just like night and day. That's the bottom thing. So there's a whole lot of really important, you all know this, hydration and nutrition are important, but when you put a good plan into practice, I'm telling you, I've been doing it for a long time. It's unbelievable how learning how to take care of yourself makes a huge, huge difference. I did 50 miles and I was fine. I didn't like the rain too much and didn't like the course change, but I was like, I could have gone on for who knows how much longer. So heads up.
We've unleashed the animal and athlete inside. You know, it was kind of sleeping. Now it's like, oh, this isn't an age thing.
The old man's ready to go.
The old man, yeah, he's going to be 20 before you know it. We're working on aging him backwards.
Yeah, so here you go.
Well,
have
thank
fun.
you.
Take it away.
Thank you. So welcome back. I'm Joanna Hodorowska, Nutrition in Motion, and basically what I do is I help you learn what your body is trying to tell you and help you understand what the foods that you're eating are doing to your body. And as you get older, and as you run longer, these issues kind of come up a little bit more, that you're not recovering as well. You're getting heavy leg syndrome. You're getting cramps. You're getting nauseous. You're getting fatigue. These are all things that are all nutrition-based issues. Today I'm going to be talking more about the actual nutrition portion and things to consider when you're actually running, before, what you're eating before, the day before, race day meals and things like that. And then the things to start paying attention to, because you're not doing your event yet, but you've got to look at what you're eating, what combinations you're eating, and how that affects the way that you're running and how you're recovering. Because if you start doing your long runs and it basically makes you feel completely wasted and useless for 3 days, there's something wrong with that nutrition plan. If you're starving for 2 days afterwards and you just feel like the bottomless pit, there's something wrong with the combinations that you're using for your recovery meal. It could be the timing of the meals, but it could be that you're eating just a carb-heavy diet, which is typical of athletes because everything is about carb loading, and you need your carbs and you need your carbs, but you actually don't need as many carbs as you think you do. And it's really trying to play around with the kinds of carbohydrates, the combinations of the carbohydrates with the proteins, fats, and vegetables, and then put those combinations together so that you understand, this is my pre-race meal. This is what's going to fuel me the best for my run tomorrow. This is my best breakfast that's going to fuel me for the run later today. And be able to practice that in your training so that when you get to race day, there's no guesswork anymore. You already know what those optimal combinations are. You know, and it's going to be different for every single person, because when I work with people, I'm actually working with, I think, 4 people in this group, and even though some of the principles are the same in terms of meal combinations and timing, everybody has a different schedule, everybody responds differently to the foods, and the combinations, you know, are going to be different for every single person. For me, my best pre-race meal is an egg with baked potatoes, and a little bit, and the eggs are the fat and the protein, and the baked potato is my carbohydrate, you know, and then they've got the fat coming in from the egg yolk to help stabilize the blood sugar. If you're just having carbohydrates, you're basically spiking that blood sugar, and you're setting yourself up for needing more calories during your event. The more calories you need to take in, the further you go, the more GI distress you have. So really the goal isn't to see how many calories you can get away with. It's really the opposite of how few can you get away with, because you can always supplement with extra calories when you need them. But if you've gone too far and you start getting the nausea and the bloating and things like that in the stomach, you basically have to walk, and sometimes you have to throw up in order to feel better. And that's just not really a great race strategy, is it? No. I don't think anybody really wants to get sick. And then last time we were talking about the hydration. Sometimes nausea is also a sign of dehydration. So these are all things that I address when I'm working with my clients in the Table to Race program, because what you put on your plate is what's going to either fuel you or kind of make you more tired and not do what you want it to do. So in terms of the meals in general, you want to have a balanced meal. Well, what the hell is that, right? So generally speaking, you want about a half a cup of some kind of protein. So that's 3 to 4 ounces. Some people can do more, some people can do less. It can be eggs, it could be, except for somebody who has allergies to eggs. So it could be eggs, it could be chicken sausage, it could be leftover, whatever you had from dinner. It could be, well, bacon's probably not the best option, but it's nice and salty too. But you want to play around with those things. Probably a piece of steak is not going to be your best option in the morning, but it is doable. I had one client who, her best race day meal, and basically any meal before she went running, her meal before was a big sweet potato, collard greens, and a turkey thigh. So it didn't matter if the race started, she was doing triathlons, but it didn't matter if the race started at 7 a.m. She would still have 5 a.m. That would be her pre-race meal, is the collard greens, a big sweet potato, and a turkey thigh. But she practiced that in training, and she played with those other combinations, and she's like, this is what really gives me the fuel. So back to the combination. So you're going to have that protein, which is about a half a cup. Then you're going to have about a half a cup, maybe 3/4 of a cup for the men, maybe a cup of some kind of carbohydrate. That could be pasta if you don't have wheat sensitivities. It could be quinoa, it could be white rice, it could be wild rice, it could be potatoes. Beans are probably not going to be the best source of energy for most people, but that's also a thing to contemplate too. And then fruit is also a carbohydrate, but that probably isn't going to give you enough sustained energy to really be an optimal fuel. Then you want to add, at least half a cup, preferably closer to a cup of green vegetables, because that has the calcium and magnesium, it has some of the fiber, and it has a lot of the nutrients that your body needs to kind of give you the energy that you need. And then fat is something that, you don't want to have hydrogenated fats, but you want to, not avoid the fats, you want to include them. But you want to think about having all of your meals pretty much in that ratio, not just lunch and dinner, not just breakfast, but kind of all your meals. So that's part of the strategy of trying to balance your blood sugar and trying to get your body to start burning its fat stores rather than eating mostly carb-rich foods that are going to actually increase your fat stores. So you want to burn your we all have fat stores, and typically there's 60,000 to 80,000 calories of fat stores, and there's only 2,000 in terms of sugar from muscle glycogen. So which source do you want to access? You want to access the fat, because you're going to get more energy from that, and it's more long lasting. If you're eating more carb heavy meals, you're burning sugar, and you're going to constantly need more sugar, because the sugar spikes the blood sugar, and about an hour and a half or 2 later you're tired, cranky, and irritable, and craving more of those sweet things. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions so far?
So having this meal that's sort of substantial before you run, how long does it take to eliminate this meal before you start running so that you don't have issues while you're running?
So this is something that you're going to play with as well, but typically it's a good 2 hours. For some people it's 3, but it depends on what you put in there. If you're going to have a piece of steak, that's probably going to be more like 3 hours rather than just 2, but you might be okay with just 2 ounces as opposed to 3 or 4. So it's trying to play around with those combinations. Typically before a long run, even though today you're not doing a long run, but let's say you're doing oatmeal with berries or half a banana, and maybe you'll put some peanut butter in there or some nuts for some fat. If you just add an egg to it, that'll help to balance out some of the blood sugar, and that can be still digested easily within 2 hours. Eggs are typically a really easy to digest item. You don't need 2, you just need 1. I've done 2, and 2 just it just doesn't feel that great. Last year I was doing a marathon swim, which is 8 miles in the river.
Ooh.
And it was a relay. I know, everybody loves swimming, don't they know? But it ended up being a 3-person relay, so we would do half hour shifts, which was fine because then you've got an hour in between the next leg. And I had brought my baked potatoes, and I had brought a couple hard-boiled eggs that were already peeled, and I had brought my electrolytes, because you need your electrolytes too, even when you're swimming and sitting on the river. But at one point I was like, oh, I'll just eat both eggs. Well, I swam half hour after that, and I could just be burping some of that egg, and I was like, okay, next time 1 is plenty, and that's going to be it. So it's again, how little do you need versus how much can you get away with. That's part of the combination. But play around with it. Maybe chicken will be okay. But the steak is going to be too much. The egg might be okay. Maybe you get some of those the little chicken sausage links, or even a chicken sausage that only have half of that. Maybe it's a third of that. But that's what you kind of play around with. What sits best in your stomach, and do not do spicy food. Jack will tell you that in the middle of his run, or no, probably 2/3 of the way through, right? He didn't read what they said, but they had spicy burgers, bean burgers, and the beans would have been fine because he had that at an earlier rest stop, and that spiciness just totally destroyed his stomach. And I think 3 days later, you were still kind of suffering from that. So spicy, save that for after your long event. Do not do it the day before. If you love Indian food, do it the day, do it as your recovery meal. Don't do it as your pre-race meal. So there's these little things like that too that kind of come into play, but it's trying to find those optimal combinations. Make sense? Now, in terms of what to take during, this is going to be, it's pretty simple. So we talked, I think, last time about how many fluids to take in, and generally you want to get in at least 16 ounces of fluids. Most of I think you've got a little a pack. Those are usually the little bottles are 16 ounces, 20, something like that. You want to try to get at least that per hour. For some people, if you're a heavy sweater, you're going to have to add more electrolytes, but you're also going to need to shoot for either 20 ounces in 45 minutes or 30 ounces for an hour. So it depends on the individual, but generally the minimum when you're running is going to be 20 ounces is the goal in terms of how many fluids you want to take in. You can put some electrolyte like a sports drink into it. One of the ones that I use pretty often is Infinite, and straight out of the box it's pretty good. This is actually 2 scoops, which is what they recommend, but I never recommend more than 1 scoop per container, because you don't really need 220 calories an hour. You really only need about 100, maybe 150, depending on the individual. And you want to think about what's going to comprise the calories in that 100, 150 calories per hour that you're trying to get. Is it going to come from your liquid nutrition? Is it going to come from gels? Is it going to be dates? Is it going to be baked potatoes or baked sweet potatoes? You can bake some potatoes or sweet potatoes, cut them into slices, and then put a little bit of nut butter in between and make little sandwiches out of it. So that could be a really great fuel source too, where you're getting some of the carbohydrates, you're getting some of the extra potassium. Put sea salt on there too, and you get some of the salt in there, and then they're really easy to digest. You can eat it and just go. So that's something where you might want to consider having something like that. And dates are another one that's really easy to digest. But you might want to consider that also. If you had your breakfast, 2.5 hours beforehand, and you're getting a little hungry, a couple of dates, a half a baked potato, that's going to give you that quick fuel. An easy to digest fuel that you can go start the run and be fine for the first 45 minutes or so. But you want to basically start adding those calories in probably every 20 minutes take a couple of gulps of your liquids and take a bite or two of whatever it is that you're using as your fueling source. If you're doing gels, that's also an option too, but you have to play around with which gel works best for you. You know, there's now like 20 different brands out there. Some people love Honey Stinger, some people like the Cliff Shots, some people like the I can't remember the other ones. Goo, thank you. Goo, that's pretty common. You know, so, and some of them have caffeine and some of them don't. So some of them will tear your stomach apart and some will just feel great. So it's trying to find which combinations work, and if the gels don't work, then we have to go to something else. If the Tailwind isn't working, if the Infinite's not working, if whatever powder you're putting in isn't working, I work with you to find what the alternative solutions are. You know, there are some people that can't put any of the powders into their drink because it just doesn't sit well in their stomach. So then it's just, we're working on electrolytes and water, but then we're using real food sources as the other combination. And for some people it's, you know, the Crustables, because, and some people use just the peanut butter or some kind of nut butter, not a PB&J, because we take out the J, it's a little messy. But you just do the peanut butter with the bread and then eat a quarter of it at a time every 20-30 minutes or something like that, and that gives you that slow sustained energy. You know, if they have soft pretzels, you don't eat the whole darn thing, you know. eat just a chunk of it, you know, enough to kind of get you a little bit going. But if you're going to eat the whole thing, you're just going to feel like you got a brick in your stomach, and that is just not comfortable when you're running. Make sense? So these are things that, you know, it's simple yet complex, and because everybody's different and everybody digests differently, it's about finding those optimal combinations for you and what works. And that's what I do with every single person, and it's different for every single person. So it's not like, okay, everybody's going to do this and that's how it is. Everybody tolerates things differently, and your schedule warrants a different plan. Some people are can't tolerate the animal proteins as well, so we do less of that. But it's all about trying to start paying attention to, how do I feel when I'm running? How do I feel after I'm running? How do I feel the next day? Am I voraciously hungry? If you're voraciously hungry, probably you didn't eat that recovery meal within an hour after finishing your meal. Or it could be that you had just too much pasta or too many carbs after that, and it's spiking the blood sugar, so you're starving 2 hours later. And if you keep eating that way, then you're just going to be feeling like the bottomless pit for 2 days. And when I was doing Ironman training, which I don't know if you're familiar with Ironman, but that's, you know, 2.5 mile swim, a 112 mile bike, and then a short 26.2 marathon at the end. You know, that's all in one day. When I was doing that training, good grief, I wasn't eating the way I'm eating now. And I was just carbs, 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 and more carbs, and I would be starving after all those long runs and the long bikes. Just starving for 2 days. So once I learned how to balance my blood sugar, that all went away. You know, once I balanced the blood sugar for my clients, the evening ice cream and the evening treats 2 hours after dinner go away. So it's a combination. Yeah, it really does go away. Most people look at me like, that's not possible, but it is. And part of it is, you know, if you're mismanaging that blood sugar, the craving for those sweets are just, you know, insatiable. And the ice cream screams your name from 3 rooms over, you know. So it's something about, you know, trying to balance that blood sugar, trying to adjust the timing of the meals at the same time, so that your body starts to use the energy stores that it already has and not crave those sugary things, because it really doesn't need those calories. They taste good, but then you can just have, you know, the kitty cup, and that's going to be plenty. You know, you don't have to eat out of the pint and eat the whole thing, you know. So anybody have any questions? No
Coffee?
Questions today?
Coffee? How does coffee play into
So
it?
coffee, you know, depending on which article you read, coffee either, it is actually helps to kind of metabolize a little bit more, access some of the fat stores better. But if you're not drinking coffee, don't suddenly start drinking coffee, especially the morning of your event or the morning of race day. But if you're normally drinking 2 cups of coffee, then just drink 2 cups of coffee. Don't have 3. I had one client who, even though it wasn't a running event, it was a swim event, and it didn't start till 9, and he likes to get to the events early so that he could get a prime parking spot. So we get there at 7. Well, he had the whole thermos of coffee. That's the first time he had a panic attack in the swim, because it was too much coffee and it just revved him up. So too much coffee isn't necessarily a good thing. And then there's some articles that also say that it'll dehydrate you. But if you're used to 2 cups of coffee or 1 cup of coffee, go ahead and have your cup of coffee. You know, you're probably not going to feel as great if you don't have it. Or it might be 1 is going to be enough on race day, because you already have race day jitters to start with. We don't need to amplify it with more coffee. Make sense? Yeah. So it's just trying to, you know, balance it out. But if that's what you already do, then keep doing it. And same thing with, you know, the week before the race. You know, don't change your diet drastically the week before the race. But if you're in that balancing the blood sugar kind of eating with the balanced meals and the balanced timing of the meals, as your exercise level and intensity goes down that week, your appetite goes down that week. So you don't have to change anything. You don't have to go carb load the day before, because that's going to flip your body back into that sugar burning mode, and you can have more fatigue and more other issues during your event rather than feeling, you know, energized. So that pre-race meal in the evening, it's still going to be what you normally eat. So it's going to be, you know, whether it's the potato or the pasta, but instead of having 2 cups of pasta, you're going to minimize that to 1. You can increase it by 1/3. But you don't want to increase it, you know, by double. But you're still going to add the protein, you're still going to have the fat, and you're still going to have some of your vegetables. So you're kind of eating normally the week before, but it's trying to figure out what is your normal and what is the best way of eating for you. And it's probably not going to take just a week. It probably will take a month to 6 weeks minimum just to kind of get to that place. But, you know, I have some clients that give me 2 weeks, and some clients that give me a month, and they're like, I've got an Ironman to do. What can you fix me? Sure, I can fix you, but you've got to do the work too. So I actually like those clients, because they typically will do as I say, and they don't question it, and then they're like, wow, this really worked, this is amazing, you know. So the more time we have, the easier it is. The less time we have, it's just a lot more work on your end, and there's less playing and kind of finding out, well, what does work for me and what doesn't. So I have the Table to Race program, which is basically helping you put those meal combinations together, help you understand how your body works and what combinations work best for you. And I'm like the mad professor, so I give you your tasks, and you get to go play lab for in between sessions, because you already know how you feel the way you're eating. We're going to change 1 or 2 things, and then you'll see how your body adapts and how it changes, and then we work on the challenges in between the sessions, because if it's not easy to implement and easy to do every day, then it's not going to be the right plan for you. And that's what a lot of people do, is they read something and go, ooh, this must be me. Well, it's a little bit, you know, there's not one program that works for everybody. And it's really trying to optimize it for you and help you understand what symptoms you're looking for, and how to know how to correct it. In Tom, I'm gonna pick on you, Tom, sorry. But Tom and I were talking this week, and he says, you know, the dialogue in my head completely changed. And because we talked about dehydration last time, then he knew, he's like, oh, well, I have this symptom, I have this symptom, I have this symptom, oh, and I have this symptom. This is definitely dehydration. I now know what to do. So I kind of do the same thing with the nutrition part too, where once we correct some of the issues, then you have a better understanding of, okay, I've got this, and this going on. Now I can look back at what I did and I can change it. Now I know what to do now, because I know what those symptoms are and how they apply to me, and I know what the next steps are to fix it. And then it's about, you know, preventive nutrition, so that you don't have anything to fix during your event, because you already know what works for you. So that's really what I do with all my clients, is just help you fix the issues that are there. And I might be able to find some other issues that you didn't realize were nutrition related, and fix those too. We have a question.
Yeah, I've been playing with my hydration nutrition for a couple of years, and I've like about either dehydration or low blood sugar and different races. I think I finally gotten over that. But I've like now started with just putting my electrolytes in my liquid
Mm-hmm.
any sugar and then taking you. And I do it every 45 minutes and it seems to work for me. But I don't know if I'm understanding you. Is that okay for a marathon?
You know, it depends on the individual. For some people, that works perfectly. So you put your electrolytes in your fluids, and then you just use the gels as your energy. Some people will get bored of the gels. Sometimes it's changing the flavors so that you have some kind of variety. And then there's some that they'll do that 1 hour, then do the dates or the potatoes the opposite hour, or you know something else, you know, so that there's some kind of variety. So it's really different, but if that's working for you, there's really no reason to change it. But you know, if you don't know what's going on, it can get tricky. Well, actually, dates and potatoes are not that hard to transport. They're easier than you think. You just stick them in a little baggie and then that's it. You know, if you need, I have these little containers for the salt tabs. They're these little coin purses. So then you don't have to fumble with the baggie. You just put the salt tabs in here, and you're done with it. You know, and you just stick your tongue in there, grab one or two, and you're good to go. And you can still keep running. It's a little harder when you're riding your bike, but that's the way to do it. You know. So to answer your question, if that's working for you, then stick with it. But you know, a lot of people don't know what to work with, and you said you were fumbling with a bunch of things for a number of years. If you don't want to fumble for a couple of years and keep guessing, you know, that's the advantage of working with somebody who is an athlete and understands what the body does and is trying to optimize that plan for you so that you can just get on with your training and not have to go, is this going to work for me? Well, and you start asking everybody around you, what do they do, when all you need is really a plan that's going to work for you.
But Tom didn't invite you in 2012.
Tom didn't know me yet in 2012. You know, I'm sorry, I came late. I came late to the program. Better late than never. Yeah, so if any of you have more questions, I'm going to let you go on your run. But you can contact me at www.nutritioninmotion.net. There's also a little link on there that you can set up your 15-minute session with me, so that you can, you know, we can talk about what it is that's going on with you and see, should we work together, or I can give you a pointer to kind of sort things through. But that's basically on the website too, and I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn. I think I'm everywhere. And you need to add me to the Facebook group in this Galloway thing. We need to connect on Facebook. So if you have any questions, I've got some cards here. I've got a handout too. And enjoy your run, enjoy your training, and if you got any questions, let me know.
This is for mine.
And these are $1 today. They're usually $1.50, but for anybody who wants one, they're a whopping $1. So thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.